Hey, RetconRaider here, and welcome back to Warhammer 40k Rogue Trader. As today, we finally wrap things up here by drumming up one last side quest. We'll get a gander at whatever's going on over here, chat up that tech priest, see if we can resolve whatever the issue might be. I am fully expecting a lights out puzzle, based on what we saw on the way in, but let's gather some intel. Once the text is ready for final interpretation, the compiler sends it to the choirmaster, along with a list of meanings for the known images. Man, they really went all out on this place. The mechanism rotates steadily, adding dry clicking notes to the chapel's melody every time a manipulator catches against one of the dents on the drum. I mean, as impractical as this whole setup might be, it is very much in keeping with the Imperium's aesthetic. What would you even call this? Like, Victorian goth punk? The receiver's enormous reels direct paper tapes containing unprocessed text into the chapel's depths after blessing the paper with an imprint of sacred cogs.
Keep your wits about you.
The voices blend in an unnatural unison. The longer you listen to the choral chant, the stronger your headache grows. Oh, that is cool. I assume that's for, like, more distant or complex astropathic messages. Alright, let's see what's going on. Protect us from the machine spirit's unrest. For without his gifts, our sacrifices are fruitless. You can barely hear the voice of the young astropath standing very still next to the bulky mechanism. His face frozen in a mask of despair. His anemic hands are pressed to his chest, clutching crumpled strips of thick paper. He hears you approach and composes himself. The Exsellsior, his head lowered, does not so much as glance in your direction. With his hands folded underneath his robe, he makes a barely audible, unpleasant sound. A prayer in Technolingua. Gentlemen, what seems to be the problem? The sacred compiler is ailing, your lordship. A gloom has come over the machine spirits, and they are disrupting the mechanism's operation. The 12th row of the drum is now adding incorrect symbols. The man shows you a stack of papers, and you notice at once that the rows of squiggles on each line all end with the same glyph. We summoned the servants of the Omnissiah, but the machine spirits are none too eager to heed our prayers. The esteemed Exsellsior is in a state of tech prayer trance, and hasn't moved from the spot for a day now. He shrinks his head into his shoulders timidly. I had the audacity to think the sacred compiler could be better helped by examining its parts. But who am I to question the secret knowledge of the Adeptus Mechanicus?
Unit Sigma AR-87 is currently in a tech trance of shared comprehension with the spirit of the Archaeotech device, cataloged under the name of Stream Spindle. Disturbing the unit is not recommended.
Pascal falls silent for a few seconds.
However, a preliminary diagnostic has revealed several algorithmic faults that are in conflict with the sacred mechanism's processes. A practical intervention in certain cycles will likely aid the release of the accumulated burden.
Right, so actual factual maintenance as opposed to digital prayers. Just how serious is this? The young man exclaims in astonishment. Imagine a single extra character creeping its way into the coordinates for a warp jump and sending the flagship to the center of a star. Imagine the word disloyal becoming is loyal, resulting in thousands of your faithful servants falling victim to treachery. Nothing is a trifle to an astropath. You know what? Fair enough. So how did this happen in the first place? More damage from Voigtvir's treachery? Forgive me, your lordship, but I do not know the answer. The astropath lowers his voice to a whisper, glancing at the praying Exsellsior. I'm afraid even the Adeptus Mechanicus don't fully comprehend the workings of this mechanism. We're only knowledgeable on the surface-level machines. The receivers commit the messages to paper. The transcribers sort the mental imagery by semantic category and feed it into the thesaurus core, and then the sacred compiler supplements the message with a list of symbols and their interpretations. However, the mechanism extends far deeper into the bowels of the ship. Therefore, I wouldn't even venture a guess at the possible source of this trouble. Understood. Well, you know, I'm a bit of a tech head myself. Also, I have the chief Exsellsior right over yonder. So we'll have a look at the surface structure. Perhaps we can help expedite. Okay, so what are we actually doing here? Compiler out of order. Fix the issues affecting the chapel's machinery. The mechanism that permeates the entire chapel has been malfunctioning. Every issue causing the problem must be identified and resolved. Okay, right, yeah, that sounds simple enough. I mean, we saw several red screens on our way in, so... Yes, I do feel like they're... Oh, wait, hold on. We've got new tech use checks in play. Grumbling receiver router. Scraps of paper are stuck deep inside the mechanism, causing it to rattle terribly. Cleaning the machine's parts and anointing them with sacred unguent restores the machine to its clear, clanging voice. Really? Paper jam?
Is there money to be made?
Wax-stained interpreter.
Operation successful.
Once clean of the candle wax that had seeped inside, the inner workings of the interpreter move much more easily, allowing it to once again wax poetic. Faulty receiver calibrator. The sensors of the text-correcting calibrator are dead. A prayer to the Omnissiah makes the new sensors spring to life. I mean, it might be the prayer, it might just be, putting in new ones. Who's to say? It is a mystery. Malfunctioning cogitator. The miniature screens are displaying red error messages. You command the machine to run the diagnostic, and the messages disappear. Oh, no. We've still got some red screens. Let's get a closer look. Huh. Wow, really? That felt so obvious, like that was almost certainly going to be a puzzle where we'd have to toggle all these screens to cycle all the red ones out. Though maybe we still do, maybe... Oh, here we go. Faulty transcriber manipulators. The transcriber's quills are leaving blots on the paper. You remove the device's casing and discover a leaking ink supply hose.
Rise to the top.
Well, we can't have that. Proper calligraphy requires a feather-light touch. And that can't be it, right? It is telling us to return to the astropath. Your lordship. The astropath smiles at you, the shy, awkward smile of someone unused to smiling. The sacred mechanism is working again with no disruptions. With a trembling hand, the psyker hands you a strip of paper with smooth rows of etched characters, this time containing no errors. The Exsellsior rises proudly to his feet and says in Low Gothic, a language he clearly has not had much practice in.
With sacred words and virtuous thoughts turned toward the God Emperor, I have been able to pacify this mechanism's wayward spirits. The Omnissiah blesses.
I mean, no disrespect intended, I'm sure you did great in there, but I feel like this was more of a group collaborative effort, like maybe doing actual repairs helped too. The engine seer eyes you respectfully, but with very sincere and poorly concealed confusion.
I recommend installing 2 incense-burning units in this compartment to prevent the spirit's continued anger. The unit Zachary Wise will be provided with a list of minor recommendations, 142 in total, for improvements to this compartment's maintenance. Failure to implement will result in sanctions on the part of the Adeptus Mechanicus priesthood.
You know what? Yes, this place could use some better maintenance. And I guess we're done? Receive the decoded reports from... Okay. So wait, did we receive decoded messages, or do we need to go pick them up somewhere? Because everyone literally just walked away from me. Which I guess means we need to go talk to Zachary Wise. Yeah, there's no one else loitering around waiting for our attention, so... Ah, your lordship, I have something for you. The choirmaster hands you a sheet of paper with uniform lines of machine type etched into it. Thanks to your assistance in repairing the compiler, we have been able to interpret a most curious message. It contains a call sign that agents of the renegade Voidfear used in their especially important reports. Oh, is that so? You think this might be another trap? It wouldn't be the first time he's tried. He was more likely the intended recipient. Right. Okay, so when exactly was this sent? I cannot say with certainty, your lordship. Following the repair work, I went through texts that had defied decoding before. This signal had lost its way in the bowels of the mechanism. It could be a week old, or years. Yeah, that doesn't really narrow it down. Alright, what does it say? Only a few words. Lilimed, Odonathus 9. The winds have ceased. It is done. Now, Lilimed is Voidfear's call sign for special reports, but the rest is a code we are unfamiliar with. That said, we know where to look for the truth. The Odonathus 9 system. Odonathus 9. It does sound familiar. Thank you for your wise advice. I will certainly look into this. I have no doubt of that, your lordship. Zach, I'll catch you later. Goodbye, your lordship. Okay, so it turns out our reward for this particular errand is an actual quest. That is really exciting. I mean, obviously we're not going to find Voidfear there. This is a DLC quest, not part of the main campaign. I'm sure they're saving the actual confrontation with Voidfear for the main game. But I am still very intrigued because this could easily reveal new information that helps further flesh out the narrative and motivations. Because there are definitely some points of confusion where Voidfear is concerned. Like, they started him as our sort of maybe kind of foil, but then he really just kind of fell off to the wayside. Then again, maybe that is the ultimate payoff for his particular arc. Maybe the final crushing blow to his ego will be the reveal that despite his delusions of being a major player, he was never more than an expendable extra. A bit part player who serves his purpose and gets thrown under the bus. Clotus, I have come to bring you closure. It turns out everything was fine. Fine indeed. I will pass the confessions on with a note regarding your personal involvement. The initiate looks at you with equal parts astonishment and admiration. May the Emperor protect your lordship. Oh, and once again, I guess that's it. No obvious reward, but we did gain various minor rewards along the way. Experience points. I think some conviction. Yeah, fair enough. I guess they can't all spiral into a grand thread. I will say, though, you know, it's funny because, like, I'm both kind of disappointed but also relieved we didn't end up having a lights out puzzle back in the Astropathic Chapel. It's funny because, you know, much like the Tower of Hanoi or your basic letter substitution puzzles or the one guard always lies riddle or your classic, what is it? The fox, the hen, and the grain puzzle. You know, they're all classics of the genre, and they get reskinned and slapped into a ton of games all over the place, so they're very common, to the point where most gamers can recognize and solve them, you know, almost reflexively. So in this case, I am somewhat conflicted. On the one hand, it would have been fun to see. It is a tradition for a lot of CRPGs, but on the other hand, massively overdone. So, yeah, I guess I'm okay with it. It really did feel like they were setting up for one, though. And let's have a look here. Odanithus 9. Oh, there we go. Oh yeah, look at that. A modest colony on Jungle World. That has to be where we're supposed to go. And you know what? I am curious enough about that I am going to change what I originally had planned, which was to instead set our sights on the Forgotten Twins and Omicron, where we have two other points of interest we have yet to resolve. I think that's actually only 2 jumps out. Yeah, I'm seeing 1 to Mundus Valancius, and then... Okay, yeah, you know what? We'll do it. Also, hold on. That is also new. The Princess of Afreet on Rocky World. That's got to be that outpost we just gave Jai as a gift. Oh, I'm curious about that, too. I didn't plan around that. I didn't even know it was a thing. Oh, I'm excited. There's so many new things we're starting to see now. Speaking of which... Lord Captain, the ship's senior officers request an audience with you. They are humbly awaiting you on the bridge. Oh, was this supposed to be our organic intro to those new characters? Or is this something we triggered by talking to them? I guess we'll find out momentarily. Oh yeah, we're seeing some familiar figures here. Lord Captain, if I may request your attention for a moment. I must report a series of highly dangerous violations that have taken place in the fuel compartment. The Master-at-Arms is ignoring my demands, and I am thus forced to appeal directly to you. The Fuelers have founded a sect of some kind. This group practices fire worship of the Emperor and has been burning promethium near the fuel lines. I beg you to stop this madness before we all go up in flames. I should point out that there have been no incidents in the fuel compartment thus far, and that the beliefs of this sect do not affect the obedience of the workers or their efficiency in any way. All assemblies are conducted strictly after hours with the permission of their superiors. However, if you find their practices unacceptable, we will put a stop to them immediately. Oh, this is an interesting reversal. I really would have expected Jocasta to be the one excessively cracking down on the lower deckers, with Einrich being their de facto champion. Huh. Really kind of throws me for a loop there. Though given that he is our de facto safety officer and how his wife died, I guess it would make sense this would be of particular concern to him. So wait, they're burning our Prometheum stores? The amount of residue accumulated in the drainage tanks was so laughably small that it was not even worth recording. If there were any real misappropriations of the ship's resources happening here, I would have already punished those involved, Lord Captain. The last sentence carries a faint note of regret. Interesting, interesting. What does the Exsellsior have to say about these sorts of cults? This matter is beyond my purview. Let Confessor Adalbert be the judge of such business. A plump, rosy-cheeked old man, trust us, steps forward, his voice deep and sonorous. The Emperor protects your lordship. I can assure you that there is no heresy festering in the fuel compartment. The sect of the Fire Prophecies has been tested for purity and found to be in accordance with the Creed. Their leader, who calls himself the Oracle of Fire, is devout and submissive to his servants. They do not twist the sacred teachings, and as for their chosen forms of worship, those are neither rare nor remarkable. Many such minor cults exist in the Imperium, with the full approval of the Exsellsior. Is this Oracle of Fire actually prophetic? Has he displayed any unusual blessings or powers? At least he and his flock believe that the Emperor reveals glimpses of the possible future to him in the sacred flame. Occasionally his visions do come true, or so his followers convince themselves. We do not know whether the grace of the God Emperor truly lies upon him, or if he is merely a charlatan, or perhaps a blissful lunatic, or a wicked rogue who possesses psychic powers not tempered by his will. Yes, that. A croaking voice interrupts the confessor's words. Lord Captain, as choir master of the Astropathic Choir, I must be watchful of any threats to the ship's safety originating from the Immaterium. I have heard rumors about this oracle, and so I have sent my adepts to see him. They assert that the man is a psyker. That does track, and certainly complicates things. Like, given the Exsellsior's approval, my first impulse would be to allow the lower deckers to have this, to allow them to worship the Emperor in their own way as long as they weren't hurting anyone, even if there was a slight safety issue. But tossing an unsanctioned psyker into the mix, especially if they're a pyromancer, that is a problem. This man who speaks to the warp is a danger to himself and to the entire vessel. Both law and common sense dictate that he should be thrown into a holding cell, tranquilized, and handed over to the Inquisition to be sent to Holy Terra. Alternatively, you may also dispose of him in some other way. Okay, yeah, alright, I see where this is going. We stand ready to carry out any order. Yeah, I'll get back to you on that. Let me just get a gander at our options here. But this is an interesting one. It's very nuanced, which I do appreciate. Like, reflexively, I want to allow the cult to continue practicing, but there's obvious major issues with having an unsanctioned psyker in our fuselage, even if he is well-meaning. It's particularly an issue with Valen, because obviously he's not keen to hand anyone over to the Inquisition. But our only real alternative, aside from just letting him continue to run rampant, which is not a good idea, is to put him out an airlock, which to the lower deckers would probably seem even crueler and would deprive this guy of any chance he might have of finding more more acceptable service to the Imperium that he is otherwise loyal to? I mean, he's faithful to the Emperor. Perhaps he'd understand why he's being put through these new trials. It will be done, Lord Captain. I will see to it that he remains unconscious and his dangerous powers are kept in check. As for the cult, I am sure it will dissolve on its own, without its spiritual leader. Yeah, I don't feel great about that, but, you know, I mean, safety of the ship and everyone on board comes first. And we know how dangerous unsanctioned psychers can be. I mean, Valen might have played it faster and looser with them early on, but we've been hanging around Adira long enough to know how risky it gets. And in her case, I can make an exception, because, like, we keep a close personal eye on her. Anyway, while we're here...
The Omniscient knows all, comprehends all.
Pasca, just thought I'd check in with you. I noticed you hadn't mentioned anything about that new augmetic.
I have destroyed it.
Pask speaks in a soft voice, staring at you inscrutably. Yeah? A slight telltale rattle in Pascal's voice makes him seem unconvincing. Now, Pask, I don't want to accuse you of lying, but perhaps you misspoke.
This statement is true. I am yet to settle into a definitive course of action. I am running a spot diagnostic on the memory of the heretic Dissent. Even though purity protocols stipulate that his blasphemous knowledge must be eradicated, I am not drawn toward forbidden information, but only to data concerning the blessed Amanats.
Sure, of course. So what have you found thus far?
The success has been partial. Dement's Haneman's identity has been confirmed. The widespread influence of paranoid motivations is observable in his cognitive processes, which is what seems to have caused him to break his vows. However, extensive regions of his memory have been damaged by forbidden technologies and are, for now, defying decryption.
Right.
My study of the minds of the tech comrades, Abel, Tarsus, and Demence, has revealed an anomalous similarity between the patterns of damage their memories sustained. What I attributed to cognitive idiosyncrasies, synaptic damage, and the distortive action of scrap code may be the result of a different kind of influence. The undecryptable data fragments in their memory arrays are mysteriously symmetrical.
Oh, here we go. Right, because they're all part of the same overarching machination. No doubt arranged by Amernot himself. So how did Demence end up corrupted?
An echo of the warp. Energies of the immaterium that had seeped into real space and taken the shape of a Vox signal. I have found recorded cases of similarly induced corruption in the archive. Listening to the void is a perilous occupation.
Which does make sense. That matches the other things we found. We specifically found that warp transceiver concealed beneath the surface of Kiava Gamma, which we also attributed to the corruption of our former fabricator sensor, Delphine Cubis. Though in Delphine's case, there is also the added wrinkle that Theodora specifically recruited him for that position. So it is possible she may have known about the transceiver, or that was just an unhappy coincidence, and Delphine originally played some other role in her own secret plot, which we do know was related to a servitor ship, the Fiery Reckoning, which itself is tied into the whole tech plague thing. But you did want to know.
The quest for knowledge is our mission of highest priority. But what Demence promised was not knowledge, but a distorted copy of it. This was not what the Deus Mechanicus had told us to seek.
Pascal's voice is heavy with gloom. Yeah, some chaos-infused knowledge probably best avoided. What about Archmagos Amernot? Any movement there?
The data discovered is unreadable. It is encrypted, albeit only partially, and I hypothesize that the heretic Dissent was attempting to decrypt it. I will take every effort to extract a larger volume of data. Information pointing to the unit referred to as the Maimed Hunter is alleged to be of critical significance.
Yeah, that is a very intriguing new wrinkle. Personally, I think I'm leaning into the theory that the Maimed Hunter is yet another part of the disparate, fractured Hanu men. An aspect of Amernot, perhaps, that for whatever reason does not want them to be reunited. Perhaps for fear of what they'll become, or perhaps for fear of the process effectively killing the individual parts. The Pascal and Abel and, well, Tarsus and Demence, who we have already killed, so I mean, I guess in part we're kind of doing the Maimed Hunter's job for them. Pask, I gotta ask, have you considered that all of this might actually be part of Amernot's plan, that you and your fellow Hanumen are all just playing out preordained roles?
That is a valid hypothesis, but not a very likely one. Its truth value is irrelevant, as it does not contradict the necessity of establishing the fate of Archmagos Amernot.
The tech priest's vox is raspier than usual. I mean, Pask, buddy, you're starting to show some pretty clear patterns yourself. For someone who so zealously pursues knowledge, you also seem perpetually terrified of what that knowledge might actually reveal.
Whether knowledge can be profane is the grand question. Lay people find comfort in the delusion that knowledge is merely information. That, in and of itself, it is harmless, and only turns dangerous when it falls into the hands of the wicked.
Pascal's voice is metallic. His mechadendrites begin a fluid dance around his lean figure, coiling mysteriously. You know, I really should give him more mechadendrites to better match that aesthetic. He does actually have several special tech priest abilities that, aside from their mechanical benefit, also do add additional mechadendrites to his character model. I might work that into his future level ups.
My apologies. 90% of my processing power is engaged in the analysis of my tech comrade's memory. My response time may be longer than usual.
No kidding. Pask, I think what you meant to say was...
But that is not what I have seen. I have seen knowledge gnaw away at the minds of those who let it inside them. Yet I seek it regardless. Why? Perhaps because there really is no apostasy in knowledge? It is dangerous, yes, but not forbidden. For it was created by the Omnissiah.
Poor guy started doubting himself so hard he fired off the wrong voice line. Look, Pask, I hear you, buddy, I do. I'm just saying, you can't let the fear that knowledge might be dangerous stop you from collecting it, because every bit of knowledge we collect does have some use, even if it is just acknowledging that it is in fact too dangerous to use. Depriving ourselves of that knowledge would just further empower our enemies.
This is true. We explorators are the sappers who walk the uncharted terrain of knowledge, transforming it into habitable space until we reach a point beyond which we must not proceed. Our remains will be assigned to those that follow in our footsteps. Go no further. Their duty now is to develop in the space we have claimed while looking for ways to make further breakthroughs. Failure must never stop us, for failure is an acceptable outcome.
The tech priest lowers his head pensively. The mechadendrites slow down smoothly, and the steely overtones disappear from Pascal's voice. All right, well, you have my permission to proceed, but please, keep me in the loop.
Response? Affirmative. The decryption will continue with diligence and caution.
Glad to hear it. I'll leave you to it then.
May your labors be effective and fruitful.
You too, bud. May your batteries always be extra assaulty. Alright, so where are we? Oh, right, we're outside Dargonis. Quick spot check on colonies. The reaping is done. Also, we got some pollen of the Unreal. Very nice. That's half a stack of Mechanicus. +1 profit factor and provisions. And I believe that's it for Janus. At least for Act 2. And we're done with Foulstone. Oh, nope, we still have this one, which is very much a work in progress. We're done with Argonis. We're done with Viabos 6. And there's our mag trains. +1 profit factor, +3 mechanisms. Which just leaves these. Flawless Servitors and the Vigil of the Tech Guards. And I did spend some time thinking about this off-screen, studying our various options, plus the subsequent unlocks. At least out to the end of Act 2, I have not looked beyond that. And I will say, my initial impulse was to go for Vigil of the Tech Guards, since Valen himself is, of course, fairly adverse to propping up the entire servitor trade. But I've got to say, the Tech Guard are also pretty inscrutable. Not to mention, taking that one would shut out what I do find to be the most appealing of our Rank 3 projects, which would actually be Armored Rage, since that's the only one without a pretty massive malice. If we go Vigil of the Tech Guard, we'd essentially have to choose either Unwelcome Guests or Inferno, which aren't terrible, but I mean, the Titanforge Lance, the 9 weapons, those are definitely a good bit more appealing than very situational bonuses and a -3 malice, which honestly feels like it would directly offset some of the other benefits we'd be receiving. As far as the whole Servitor thing goes, I think, ultimately, the big justification here for leaning in that direction, at least for Valen, would be that we have very clearly seen that despite his own personal distaste for Servitors, they are simply an accepted aspect of Imperial life. You know, he might be able to crack down on it in his personal radius, or in very specific situations or scenarios, but he can't even stop its use, its widespread use, in his own protectorate, let alone in the Imperium as a whole. So if they are going to use them anyway, he might as well make sure that the ones we are using are top of the line, ones that make it less necessary to continue building additional shoddy replacements, ones that can endure their work without suffering excessively? ? I mean, there is the nod there in the description about requiring appropriate amounts of human raw materials, but given that we don't actually require people as one of the resources for this particular project, I'm going to take that to mean we are in fact using already dead raw material. I hope. Initial costs are trivial, rewards are significant. Also gives us access to another Tier 3 project that is also significant in its payout, so yeah, I think we can justify this by doing it, you know, humanely. And then we'll fire up the weapon manufactorums, since I think it is fairly evident that we're in the midst of a pending war with pretty much everyone else in the Coronis. So yeah, just thinking out loud. Flawless Servitor is already in progress, with Armored Rage next in line. Just had to do some stretching before the mental gymnastics necessary to actually get me there. Anyway, let's see what's going on over here with Jai's planet. The Princess of Afreet. Honestly, just the fact they gave us a POI for that particular event is pretty cool. The Princess of Afreet Outpost sends its awed and joyous greetings to the rogue trader. The last time so great an honor was granted to this world was many decades ago, when her ladyship Theodora von Valancius ordered that a settlement be founded here, and thereafter showed no interest in its fate. Yeah, that sounds about right. So really, Jai can't have possibly done too much worse, right? This small outpost, inhabited by 500 subjects, is a small mining complex buried in the sand, deployed under Theodora, with 5 residential modules radiating out from it. Its dark-skinned inhabitants keep the colony in austere order, regularly pray to the God Emperor, and toil diligently and without rest. Sentence structure was kind of weird on this one. I had to parse it out in my brain. A warehouse filled with newly purchased equipment has been built into the mining complex, and a new residential module is under construction for the workers hired by Mistress Hadari on Footfall. The outpost will soon begin to grow, and its mistress will be able to watch over all from her small but delightful mansion, surrounded by hydroponic gardens established on the rugged dunes. You know what? That actually doesn't sound that bad to me. I mean, yeah, I had anticipated that she would do well with this. She is a bit of a champion of the downtrodden, the lower caste, which does kind of make it all the more amusing, I suppose, that she named this place the Princess of Afreet. Considering that, given how... Actually, you know what? Let's go see if she has anything to say about this. But yeah, I do find it interesting that she named the place after her almost certainly fictional title. We know very little about who she really is, but we have a strong, sneaking suspicion that while she might be from Afreet, she was definitely not their princess, or a noble at all. Given her extensive prosthetics, not to mention her unknown ties to Octavia, who also has extensive prosthetics, I am starting to get the distinct impression that her constant childish antics and braggadocious nature are a defense mechanism born of some as-of-yet undisclosed trauma. Jai repeats a lot of words that'll be cut out in editing. Jai, I noticed that apparently my servo skull is supposed to be saying weird things, but isn't. If it were, could you explain why?
The exalted one himself must have put the words of truth into its mouth, Shireen.
Shrugging, Jai eyes you coquettishly from behind a dark curtain of hair. Alright, well, you know, I was hypothetically annoyed had it actually happened, which it didn't, so I guess we're fine. I probably borked it by constantly swapping out familiars. Also, Jai, it seems like you and Trickster Kor were friends. I don't want to make light of his death. Sorry for your loss.
My gang is quite the void beast, Sheri, with 3 heads stemming from a single neck. Kor's untimely demise will not interfere with our mutual business. I do feel sorry for his twin, though. Cora has been getting into trouble with her brother since they were kids. Getting out of trouble too, but not this time.
Her voice is dry. She looks away. The sparkle in her eyes fades for an instant.
But why are we talking about the departed, Shireen? We must save a few good words for the living. Take Falco, for example. I will impale that Ashmag on a stake, Shireen. You will see. I will pick a slim one, so he has more time to appreciate it.
Jai clenches her steel hand until it starts squeaking in protest. Yeah, well, I guess when the time comes, I'll be happy to help you with that.
Oh, I have no doubt you will.
So nothing about our new colony. Slightly disappointing, but not a big deal. Honestly, just the fact they had the POI was already more than I expected, as was the extra profit factor. It is interesting, though. Even in our brief interaction with her there, you could see her very clearly sort of deflect or use avoidance, I guess. I'm not sure what the appropriate psychological term would be. But when we brought up Kor, she essentially deflected away from the subject so as to not have to engage with the emotional or traumatic aspects of what had happened. She just immediately pivoted instead to revenge and flirting, and that really does kind of lend itself to the idea that a lot of her behavior is born of these sorts of defense mechanisms. Not exactly a new concept, but an interesting one, if played right, if written well. And I do find her a bit more intriguing now, as we're slowly starting to see around the corners of her constant... Actually, you know what? In a lot of ways, that kind of parallels her with Darren, and I love that guy. I will say, I do think long-term, Jai's going to have a really hard time competing with Cass, but short-term, I do find it interesting, and I would like to see where it goes. Also, Space Cat. But, you know, we'll see. Oh, and special thanks to the Raiders, the fine folks who help make these videos possible, including but not limited to Eerie V23, Revenant, Alois, Dragon Matrix 7, Drakiith, EgonAlter, Exsellsior, Gottlieb, James Trimmier, Kazorm, Mark Giemza, Nathan Welch Jr., OverlordPherom, RandomPassrby, RobbyB, Tomasz Piątkowski, Triphoppenskip, and Valinrook. Thanks for your support, guys. That said, if you'd also like to help support the channel, then feel free to push the buttons that do the things. Trust me, it does make a difference. Or you could even check out the PayPal, the Patreon, the Nexus GG, or the YouTube memberships. Links are in the description.
This statement is